stream has started. Let's see who accepts it.
Oh, and do you want me to put it on the Western New York Peace Center?
Yeah, I'll text it to you. Facebook has, wait, come on, Facebook. Facebook has accepted the stream. YouTube has accepted the stream. And Twitch has accepted the stream. I will now send you the link.
Wonderful. And oops.
The link has been sent.
Okay. Let's see. It's just take me a second here. And here we go. Okay, so we are, well, it says it may take a few minutes, just one second. And I think it's good. So,
Ready?
okay.
Okay, you ready to start?
I think we're ready to start.
When
yeah.
the timer says on the air, you're on the air, okay?
Okay. Welcome to Talking Peace with the Western New York Peace Center, being recorded here at Think Twice Radio in the home of the future. Also the home of our friend and producer, Richard Wicca. Thanks, Richard. Thank you to our friends at WBNY, Buffalo's original alternative radio station at 91.3 FM. We're very grateful to Buff State and WBNY. And when I think of gratitude, I think about our indigenous friends. I think about our friends who are, whose ancestors were enslaved. And one thing that comes out loud and clear is that in spite of all the hardship, in spite of all the injustice and the land grabs, the enslavement, everything else, that gratitude is the attitude. And that the Haudenosaunee, for example, start every event with a Ganonyo, which really just is thankfulness to Mother Earth for giving us all the things that we need to have a good life here, for all the wonderful plants and animals that give us medicine and nutrition and company and make the whole world go round, for all the beauty, the water that gives us life itself. Mini Wachoni, water is life, and
Yes.
And all the star, the brother, sun, grandmother, moon, all the stars, all the creation, and then the creator and the love that animates us all, that brings us here today. So I'll say Nyahweh, and then you all could say Nyo. So Nyahweh.
Yeah.
So we're excited about our show today. It's very relevant. There's so much going on right now, but this has been going on for a very, very long time. We have some stories that we'll be going over that are long in the past that are still going on right now, and a lot of work to do around that. So we're calling this government framing, and outrageous. It's outrageous government
is.
framing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and it has happened time and time again in little ways, big ways, and it really, really amazingly horrible ways that bad acts by the government. So, and we're very thrilled to have, we could have also called this, and I like to put it as a subtext, Justice for Geraldine Robinson Pointer. So we have There's a wonderful campaign that is just that, Justice for Geraldine. And so I'll just go right round the circle. What we have James Coughlin. Coughlin, am I saying it right?
Coughlin.
Coughlin. So James has been heading up the charge on that campaign. We're so grateful to you, James, and also works at Burning Books. I should have known that, but it's good to know, our friends and allies at Burning Books. So, welcome, James.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
And we have Terrance Robinson.
Terrance Pointer.
Pointer. I'm sorry, I misspoke. I knew that because I have you in my call list. So I'm so grateful to be able to call you and to have you here to talk about what's happened to your mom and your family. And thank you for coming,
No
Terrance.
problem. I'm glad to be here.
And last but absolutely, so grateful, so just wowed by who you are and how you are in spite of all the injustice that you've had. Geraldine Robinson Pointer. Geraldine, thank you so much for coming. And thank you for all your kindness and you're an amazing person. The strength that you show and that calm and that loving, that you have in spite of all that you've gone through is just amazing. So thank you, Geraldine.
And I'm thankful just to be here so the people can know what happened when we got arrested.
Oh, they have to know. And that's what
Exactly.
we're going to talk about, exactly that. And so before we do, we're going to be talking about government framing people, how outrageous it is. We're going to talk about the justice campaign for Geraldine, about what happened and everything. And there's numerous other known and unknown, countless examples of this. But before we do, we like to think about the values that we think of in this conversation. So I want to just go around the room and have each of you talk about what you think, what do you think of when you think about values that relate to this issue? So, James?
Yeah, I think of intellectual freedom, the First Amendment. I think it's very prescient to, and especially being at Burning Books, we sell a lot of books that have or are banned in other places around the country, and just the right to not only for folks to sell what they so choose to, but even with that, like what could, the Afro-Asian Bookshop, the East-West Bookshop, what could those institutions have been if those were allowed to flourish?
Exactly.
Thank you. Yes, that will come up very strongly in this whole topic. Terrance?
Well, we talk about stuff. I put it like that. Let me just say it like that. I'm gonna use that word, stuff. Me and James have talked about different topics pertaining to my mother and the situation, and I really can't put my 100% input because at the time I was 6 years old. 6 years
Sure.
old.
Right.
So now,
Right.
being at the age I am now, I look back on everything that we went through as a family, and we just need a voice.
Right.
We need a voice. Just want to be
Right.
heard like
Right.
everybody else.
Right.
And everybody has an opinion.
Right. But so you're so right, and it's so important that having your voice, using your voice, telling your story, which is really what we're going to be doing
Exactly.
here. Yep. So thank you so much for that. That's a big, important part of all of this. That vital. Key to all of this. And Geraldine.
Yes, I would like to thank everybody that's been helping with what's going on, and I let them know that I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, because I'm glad my son Terrance came, because he suffered when I suffered too, because they were put in foster homes taken away from me.
Right. Right. So that thankfulness that comes up again. That's why I said that is. In spite of everything that happens, that thankfulness, the thankfulness to the people who are helping you. This is why, actually, a lot of times the values I'll pick truth and love, and we're sort of talking about that right now. because of the truth of the matter, right, that we want to give voice to, that we want to have the free speech to share, and that's about this story as well as about, the society and the way it works, which is some of the other part that gets quashed, right?
Yes.
And the love that makes people want to share it and makes people do what you're just talking about. Try to help each other, try to make the changes because we need them. And, I didn't introduce myself, Vicki Ross, or I have reclaimed my teenage nickname of Victory because I like to mention that the real victory, everybody wins.
Yes.
So, and the real loss, everybody loses. People may think they win, when they do something unjust or it's power over instead of power with, but they don't. They'll pay in the end, and I'm going to say
Yes.
it's clear, it's, either here or later on. And so when things come out and the truth comes out, we all benefit when we know what's really going on, and yeah, so it's very key. And it made me think of that, that we will all benefit when the truth gets told and the changes get made.
Yes.
So, so I like to, since you're heading up the campaign and since we've set up, as we have, James, why don't you just give us the bare bones of what happened in 1967? Is
Sure.
it? Yeah. Thanks.
So, to preface that, Martin Sostre moved to Buffalo in 1964 following his first incarceration in Attica. He worked at Bethlehem Steel and saved up money to open up the Afro-Asian bookshop at 1412 Jefferson Ave and the East-West bookshop at 289 High Street in the Fruit Belt, which is where Miss Geraldine managed, and that was the store that she ran. And these stores were steeped in black history, books about black nationalism, revolutionary thought, as well as anti-imperialism, and that caught a lot attention of law enforcement. So the stores were already under surveillance. However, in June 1967, you have the Buffalo Uprising, whereas there's police brutality going on, resistance all up around Jefferson area, and that leads to heightened surveillance of Sostre's stores because he kept them open during the uprising, and then a couple weeks later that eventually led to the frame-up of Miss Geraldine, Martin Sostre, claiming that they were using the bookstores as a front to sell drugs, that Sostre had been making Molotov cocktails in the basement of the store. The evidence provided by the state, the district attorney's office.
Evidence.
Yes, was, very faulty. The main informant later recanted witness. Sostre was even granted clemency after being in jail for 9 years as sort of New York State's acknowledgement, if you will, of the frame-up. However, Sostre and Miss Geraldine's records have not been exonerated through the district attorney's office, so last year in July, we kicked off this campaign, filed applications through the district attorney's convictions integrity unit to review these cases. We've been applying pressure not only on the DA's office, but organizing the community, teaching about this important history. And we recently learned that he made a motion through Erie County Court arguing that there's a alleged claim of impropriety because supposedly a relative of the district attorney, Michael Keene, was involved in the initial investigation in 1967, and a special prosecutor, aka the Chautauqua County district attorney, was appointed to review the applications instead. Whereas, that's all the information we really got as opposed to other specifics, no further information of, well, what if there's just a conflict of interest within the DA's office if, let's say, a member of their family gets arrested, and why is it that it took 8 months for this to even,
Exactly.
for us to learn about this? But even though it's not the victory we wanted, we still, through our organizing, through all our efforts, we at least got the DA to, do something with this, and we're trying to get it back to Erie County. Yeah.
Okay, so So that's not just only the bare bones of what happened, but
Yeah.
also something about where we are now. So we'll get more into that. I want to go back to 1967, and just from your perspective, what happened? What happened, Terrance,
Well,
to this poor 6-year-old
well,
and the rest of the family?
me and my brothers and sisters came home one day and our mother was gone. You know, because she was arrested. We didn't know for what, why. And our grandmother came and got us, I think, at that particular time. We sat down in the front room, you know, 5, 6, 7-year-old, you know,
Right.
wondering where your mother's
Right.
at.
Right,
You know, and it's just like somebody just slammed the door in your face.
Right.
And as time went by, you know, when I say time, I mean like days, not weeks yet. You're
Right.
just wondering, you know, back and forth, back and forth.
Right, right.
Where's mom? Where's mom? Where's mom? You know, and nobody really want to explain anything to you because, you know, they really don't know what's going on, you know,
Right.
the whole picture of it. But as a child, it's just like, what can you do? I mean, you're a black 6-year-old
Right.
male. What can you do? Who's going to answer your questions? Because you don't even know what questions to ask, you know? But it's terrible. I mean, I wouldn't wish it on anybody.
Right.
If it was an experiment, it worked. I mean, come on. Let's just let's try to change things now and correct the wrong so they'll be right. And looking back on other stuff that happened within the last month or two with other situations in the news,
Right.
there's still things
well-
being covered up. I mean,
Yeah.
you have a detective in the Erie County Department of Drug Enforcement. He's tearing up cars on a one-way street,
Right.
and they're covering it up. So if this is happening now, what was happening in 1967 where there's no video? No
Right.
phones, no
Right.
witnesses. And the
Right.
witnesses who were around were black, so what are you going to tell them? There's nothing happening here. Keep moving.
They're going to believe us instead of you.
So that's where we're at right now. Right now, I get upset,
Right. Well, of course.
but I look at
and then too.
Yeah, I'm-
And then too.
now I look at stuff that's happening now, like with this trying to change the venue. Why would you want to change it?
And
It happened here.
in Erie County.
And if you're trying to tell me it's people that are or in law enforcement now who were involved back then, I'm under the impression that there's some kind of cover-up or some kind of corruption that we need to address, you know, openly. Because if this happens now, it happened in 1967, how much has been covered up?
Right.
How long does it take? What, 50 years? It's going to take 50 years for what happened today to come out. 50 years from now, I'm not going to be here. Evidently, they're trying to
It
wait
is
till my
very
mother's gone so she won't be here. All we want to know is why, who,
What?
why, when,
Yeah.
who profited from it? Because evidently, it must be some kind of cover-up because somebody's profited from it.
Right.
Who was the first person who said, let's do this?
Right.
So let's find out who it was. Was it the department? Was it somebody in law enforcement at the time? Was somebody in the Erie County Sheriff's Department? Was it somebody in law enforcement? Was it something in the judicial system? Who was it? Evidently, there is a cover-up. So we need to find out who caused it, when did it happen, who knew about it. Because evidently, there's a lot of people who knew about it today that had something to do with it back then. Just find out. Let's find out. Let everybody open the page and
Right.
look at it.
Right. And Geraldine, what would you say about how it happened and what happened?
Well, when it happened, like I said, when I got arrested, I didn't even know why I got arrested.
Right.
I didn't even know what had happened.
Right.
I'm in jail. When I got bailed out, that's when I found out that they had supposed to arrested me for helping Martin sell drugs or whatever. I didn't even know what I was in jail for.
Of course, because of course you didn't do it.
Exactly. That's
Right.
why I didn't know
Right, right. No,
what
of
I
course,
was
of
there
course.
for.
Right. Right. And then how was it when you were there? And what happened, after they arrested you?
You know what? Like I said, my children had to go with my mother,
Right.
and that wasn't that good for them because she wasn't a good grandmother that would take care of her grandmother like I took care of mine. My children suffered being with their grandmother,
Right.
and that took a toll on me.
And plus that separation and the
Exactly,
blaming and
exactly,
the incarceration and
exactly.
all of that.
Exactly.
It's huge. It's huge. Yeah, well, we've been doing a lot of shows on the criminal justice system because it is a criminal injustice system.
Yes, it is.
And
Yes,
it is
it
a
is.
criminal system. So what happened here? So I'm going to say, it's very interesting, as you said, that you wanted to, here, can you still hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Yeah, okay, just checking. There was
I
was
heard that
checking.
too.
I heard something go.
Okay.
But anyway, I think things are still good. That the thing about, what happened that is so striking is back to what you said, James, about the fact that about the free speech and people's learning. So right now we're in a stage where there's fights about banning books and things like that. There's trying to get DEI, get the truth out of history books. Let's don't make the U.S. look bad. Don't talk about what actually happened here to indigenous people, to African people who were brought over, and to people being enslaved. Don't talk about that. That makes that.
So you think like this, like that happened back
So,
then. Let's
right.
talk about something else now.
Right. So they just want to block that out. But so what I want to say is here they are taking, where information and facts are being offered. There's books that have been written about the truth of the matter that people can educate themselves and know what really happened. And that's what they wanted to stop. So then they decided that was how to do it. Now,
That's how they
whether
do it.
it's an interesting question, who was they? Did it start with the police department? Did it start with the DA's department? Did it start with the mayor? Did it start with who?
Who?
Somebody decided that, hey, that we want that bookstore shut down.
And it also begs the question, well, whose power might be threatened with that bookstore open to, with people questioning the status quo, their environments, the inequalities,
Right, exactly. So, but whoever it was, or maybe, first of all, there's the who started it, but then who also, even then, there's more than one person involved, so it becomes, what people know may not be complete at every level.
Exactly.
But there's still people who know what's going on, who are seeing it through.
Because there are people right now today who knew what happened back then. Okay? Because if they're right now trying to stop things from happening in Erie County, why? I would like to be like, let it all be out in the open. I mean, how much harm has been done? How much harm can be done if you bring it out in the open now? My mother suffered. This was over years ago. So who is it protecting now if she suffered then? And how did they suffer compared to her being in prison? I'm pretty sure they went to church every Sunday.
So let's talk about what's going on now a little bit more. So you talked about the effort to change the venue. So when you got out of, now how long were you incarcerated again?
2 years and 19 days.
Okay. And when you got out, then did you get your children back right away?
Yes, because my mother had them, and I stayed with my mother until I got my own apartment.
Okay.
And it wasn't a piece of cake staying there with my mother and my children in her house.
Sure.
Because they
And-
still think that she was guilty. I mean, some
Right, so
family
that's-
members think, if you can manipulate my family members to think it was happening like that, just think about the public in general.
Right.
Everybody around my neighborhood thought like that. I had my teachers at school. We had, to talk about something real quick like this, who was the people who falsely accused her? Who were the people who judged her? Were they her peers? Because they didn't live in my neighborhood.
So,
Exactly.
Who's her
so
peers?
for your trial, did you have, was it all white people?
It was all white, and
That's another
after
thing.
all these years, I remember this one name. Can I say it? that was on the jury. It was a white lady, blonde, blue eyes, looked like the housewives that they have on TV with the high heels on. Her name was June Hines, and she didn't look nothing like me.
So who were your, who?
She didn't look. She wasn't my peers.
No, right. She led a whole different
I
life.
remember her,
You had
June
no idea.
Hines.
We discussed
Right.
that too before. We were talking about people that was going to judge you. Who judged you when you were there? Were there people in our neighborhood? Because we had people in our
No.
neighborhood who were professionals too, though, but they weren't on your jury.
Some of them that in our neighborhood, like some of the politicians, maybe didn't even want to acknowledge the fact that they could help if they could. They didn't want to come nowhere near us.
You can't dirty
Right.
their names
Well,
up.
one of-
because-
I'm sorry. One of the things that also brings up that is another issue is trying to get people to want to be in the jury pool. So a lot of times people don't want to be in the jury pool, and it's hard. You have to get permission. You have to from your employer. They have to agree that you're going to do it, and then you go in the jury pool. So. And also the ways that the jury pool is selected, which also tend to favor, people who have a landline is one way they used to do it. I don't know. So, but I think some of that is still going on where there's not a representative jury pool to even start with. And then there's the jerry rigging of the
Yes.
people who were selected.
And another, connecting to the president as well with the
Yes.
DA's office attempting
Yes.
to move the exoneration applications. To my understanding, Martin and Miss Geraldine wanted to have a change of venue due to how the press was slandering them, the biases that folks were coming into because of that, whereas the DA's office, Erie County, was insistent on having it tried here regardless of those concerns, or as Miss Geraldine said, regardless of jury of your peers. 12 how can 12 white people be a jury of your peers if you're running?
So how could they feel that way back then when they wanted to
Right.
just keep it here, and now they feel like it doesn't need to be here right now? Let's move it over here now. So
Right.
it's just like, to me, it's going to continue to be a cover up. It's going to continue to be a cover up. I mean, if you're not the one who controls the buttons or influences the people, you can silence my mother because she doesn't have a radio station. She doesn't have a TV station. You know what I'm saying? We don't have $1 million to put billboards up to say support this and support that. So as long as that continues, they're going to continue to do what they're doing to fight their battle. My mother's going to continue to fight her battle. We're not going to give up.
That
We're not going to
reminds
give
me,
up.
excuse me, when he said silence, I remember when I was in Bedford going to board again. Like I said, every time I went to board, they would ask me, was I ready to tell the truth? Was I ready to tell the truth? Every
So-
time I went to board, they said that.
So let's get into that part of it. So, first of all, it's the same old story. It's the same old story. So I have just spent 4 days out of the 8 days that the trial in Rochester for the Buffalo Five means for John Walker Jr.,
Yes.
who was falsely accused. They were trumped up charges. It was very clear, and actually there was all kinds of evidence that was pointing to the neighbor had killed the man. Had killed. The name is slipping my mind. It doesn't matter anyway. Had killed him, Watson, but whatever it was, had killed him, and there was evidence pointing to him, and there was evidence pointing to that these boys didn't do it. But somehow, which may have been also been that the people who were responsible had sort of given some false evidence about them, but there was plenty of evidence that showed that these boys didn't do it. But somebody fingered them, and then they went ahead
And went all the way out.
after them. And now the ironic part, so they got one of them to give false evidence by pressuring him, threatening him, saying you're going to be held responsible unless you tell us, unless you admit to us that they did
They
it.
did it.
And if you do, then you won't. We will.
We're going to be light on you, but we'll take care of those
not
guys.
only light on you, we will not even convict you of anything. we will, we'll just let you go scot-free. And that's what happened. So he got off, and then evidence was withheld, which is against the law, that it was not given to the defendants, and so they got convicted, 3 of them. But one of the attorneys for the last of them, or one of them, I should say, of the 4 that they were going after, just his request was just a little bit more specific, so that they felt forced to give a little bit more, and I mean 4 out of 21 pieces of evidence that would have cleared them. So he had those 4 pieces, and so that young man was acquitted. So, but the other 3 did respectively 22, 28, and 32 years each one. And then whatever they did for parole, one of them who did 32 years died very shortly after coming out. Daryl Boyd just died, about a month ago. And John Walker is in court right now trying to get them to own up to their bad deeds. Why I'm bringing this up, let's talk about the district attorney's office. Because now, boy, John Flynn should have put it on autopilot or pre-recording a thing, because he says every time, well, the reason I'm not going to retry this case has nothing to do with whether they did it or didn't do it, right? He says, we're just not going to, it's too old, we just can't do it, and so we're not doing it. Well, you're not doing it because they did not do it. And it's clear, and that was why the judgment was vacated.
Yes.
So now they're just trying to save the county money, where, first of all, the money will never give back
The suffering.
the 45 years of a person's life are not coming
Exactly.
back.
You can't pay for that.
Never coming back.
Keep the money.
effects-
Bring my health back and my youth back.
Right.
You can't.
Right. So it's just heartbreaking. But they say the same thing that they said about that has been said. It was just said about another case that was Renay Lynch. That is just in the Buffalo News today as we're taping, and yesterday. And when this goes on WBNY, it'll be in the past, but they can look it up. Just Google or DuckDuckGo, I would recommend. DuckDuckGo, Renay Lynch. Renay Lynch, Renay Lynch, Lynch. And you'll see her story where it's the same old story. She was incarcerated. She didn't do it. They just made that decision, like, we'll go after her. And, it was, manufactured evidence to frame people.
Yes.
Manufacturing
Who
evidence.
is accountable?
Right.
Right.
Who is accountable?
Nobody has been held accountable.
Who is accountable? I mean, when
Nobody has
you
been
can
held
destroy a person's life with lies, and then come to
Right.
find out later on that those were lies, and you still do not want to try to rectify or even acknowledge them. It makes me think, like, should I trust you?
Right. Well,
Should I trust you? What if something happened to me right now or tomorrow when I leave here with my mother? What if something happened to me out there in the street and I'm arrested? Will I be charged or will I be tried in Chautauqua County because of my last name, because of my mother? What's going to happen to my son? What about my cousins that have the same last name? Have they been harshly treated in the past because of this? Secretly because of their last name? So it goes to show that this is not stopping, it's continuing. Who's accountable?
Right, and it happens, and it happens again and again. It's happened. There are laws that are supposed to be preventing it, but they're not. I think when we talk about, John Walker's case, Valentino Dixon is another one.
That's another one.
That's another one. So if you want to tell the story of Valentino Dixon, do you know it?
I'm
Or just the
somewhat
basic- the
familiar
basic-
with
just
it,
the
that
basic.
essentially, like, new DNA evidence, if I'm not mistaken, helped clear and exonerate his name. And
Yes.
that's another instance, too, of going through the convictions integrity unit. And one thing also that I just want to even acknowledge, too, just kind
Yes.
of which I don't know how much influence it may have had on the DA's office, but for our rally that we had last week, like I wrote an open invitation inviting him, Michael Keene, the DA,
Yes,
to
yes.
attend because we hadn't heard anything. But
Right.
even with the DA's office, like, and going back to like, John Flynn, the predecessor, they're all on the front lines if it comes to prosecuting like the top shooter. They want to get all the good press from that, say that they're helping the community, but when it actually comes to the the harms that they've caused in the
In
past,
community,
they,
they're silent. They're silent.
Right.
and it's
There's-
and it's almost as if you can't have like the top shooter targeting that tops without the the historic harms that have caused that segregation, that have caused food apartheid, where that's the only grocery store within the neighborhood. It's all interconnected. You can't ignore one or the other.
Right. Right.
So just something, I always bring up stuff that's in the past because I figure that gives the people a clearer picture. And some people will be offended by it. One thing in particular was like, let's bring it up. Rodney King. If Rodney King beating was not videotaped, televised, who said it happened?
Right.
Who said it happened? So, this continues tomorrow, next week, next month. Who's going to say it happens when it's not videotaped? Who
Right.
word you going to take when it happens? You going to take his word, or you going to take their word? And I bring this back to say about my mother is this: when you're judging my mother, and I have my moments, I say to myself like, well, where did she do wrong at trying to raise her children? And who gave those people the authority to destroy her family, and why? There were people in my community who helped everybody in our community, but they, like I said before, they wouldn't earn a jury. They didn't have any input. They didn't even really want to ask me anything about it. I used to go to school, and I can tell the difference how
Right.
people treated us at school who
Because
knew my
of what
mother
happened.
and what happened.
Right,
And
after
us
it happened.
being alienated because, and I was young and didn't understand it, even when I got older and was in grammar school, in junior high school, it was attitudes that were different. Like, it
Right.
was just different. You don't feel them on the outside looking in. You don't see them because they're not there. But on the inside looking out, you feel them every day. Every day you feel those feelings. At one time, you have to think about this too. Like, well, when is it going to be even? That sounds crazy, doesn't it? When is it going to be even? When is it going to be? It's going to be right here, all the time. Not sometime. Not when it's over on this side. Not when it's politically correct to be over here with these people because I don't need their support anymore. When is it going to be even?
When are the scales of justice actually going to be balanced?
When is it
Exactly.
going to
When is
actually
it?
be
When is it?
justice?
It's
And so
not.
This is part of what we're talking about now is when we what you went through, both first when it happened, the trauma of that. So there's the trauma, the immediate trauma, and then there's all the years of baggage that it brought to first of all the trauma that you endured, and then the reputation, the questions, the
Yes,
doubts,
yes.
all of that, and and trauma has lasting effects. That's the definition of trauma. That's what makes it traumatic.
Traumatic,
Is that there's
exactly.
effects after the thing happened. It's bad enough, it's serious enough that it continues to hurt you and to keep coming back up inside yourself.
Yes.
So what to speak of the other things that happen, might happen, do happen, at school, in the neighborhood, with other people, it's a heavy price. And then there's the people who did the wrong when you didn't do anything to deserve that. You
Yes.
worked at a bookstore that was educating people, right? So so the people who did that did not pay the price. And right now in Rochester, the assistant district attorney who ran that whole, made all those decisions, made those deals that ended up framing these kids.
Yes.
He was there giving all his excuses, saying, "Oh, it was in the transcript. Oh, they knew
I
they
apologize
took.
to everybody.
Oh, they knew they took the taxi. Well, they knew they took the taxi, but that doesn't change the fact that you're legally required to give them the evidence that you have already dug up, especially when it is excusing them, when it's exculpatory
Yeah, it's
evidence that is
Legal till proven, not assumed guilty.
Yeah, it's the
Exactly,
Brady law
exactly.
says you have to give it to the defense. And they had 21 pieces they didn't give to anybody, and 4 of the pieces they gave to one of them. And the rest of it, no.
No.
And then they say, well, you know, they should have known. No, you should have given
You
it.
should-
That's what it is.
So
You-
your lawyer did the right thing. So we're gonna brush you over the side right there. But you guys right here, we don't even know what you don't.
and
Even,
they still didn't give him all the
Exactly.
evidence. They gave him 4 things, and that was enough to get him acquitted. So
what about the rest of it?
Right. What about the rest of it? So that is all. There's 500 documents in the case they're having right now. So it's his civil suit against the county.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he's not in good health. I mean, it has been a terrible, terrible
Toll
burden
on him.
to them all, as you know.
Yes.
You know, so for him, for Valentino, for Renay Lynch, you know, there are so many stories. And then there's stories where it may not be quite as extreme, or we don't even know.
We don't even know. So that's why I came
the
back again.
Innocence
So
Project.
how many times has things happened where there hasn't been any knowledge of it happening? And there was something else I said.
Right.
It was a joking. I think I said it to you one day. We were joking one day. I said, how about this then? How about if it be required that every time an officer arrests you, he has to take a lie detector test? What would that do to the system? How would that
Right.
crush it? What
Right.
would that do? I mean, how much pressure would that put on the officer to do the right thing every time he does his job?
Right.
I'm going to do my job because I know for a fact that they're going to ask me some questions with this lie detector test that I might not be able to completely pass. So if you put pressure on them, because they definitely put pressure on you, play by the rules. That's all we ask.
So one of the big things is also the plea dealing and okay, first of all, 98% conviction rate. Is that
How?
supposed to be a good thing? There's
When
nothing
you're locking
good
up
about
innocent
it.
people.
And when they
Yeah.
say, so you have a lot of times, and the norm is that people are faced with, say they're faced with 10 years or something,
Or
and
you
then
can
they say,
plead.
well, if you plead
Plead this.
guilty, then we'll give you, you know, only 2 years or only 3
But
years.
if we
or
take it
whatever.
to court now and we do this, we're going to have to just send you
Right.
the max because
Right.
you're wasting the court's time. So what you need to do is just plead this out right now so we can go home. And I got to go to church next week, and my daughter's getting married, and I got to finance this house for my son. He's getting college right now. Everything pertains to what they're doing, but they don't care what you're doing. You're suffering because they're lying. Stop the lying. Stop the lying. And you see how stuff change all over the world? No, it starts stuff to change all over the world when you suppress
Okay.
people. When you suppress people, it makes those people change. The stuff that happened to my mother, the suppression they caused my mother, she's still a beautiful woman.
Oh, of
She's
course,
still a beautiful
that's
woman.
where we started.
You hasn't
She's
changed
a
her.
wonderful woman.
She's still a beautiful
Right,
woman.
right,
You know what I'm saying? She's
right.
strong. Huh? You're
Right.
not going to change her. You're not
Right.
going to crush her.
Right.
So just give in because you're not going to win.
So let's go back to you and hear, what are the things that you'd like to see people do that would help with your situation?
Let their voices be heard.
Everybody has a voice.
Everybody's got a voice. Let their voices be heard.
So who should they be contacting, and is there a petition? Maybe these are questions for you, James, if you
Yeah.
want to mention, you know, what people can do. What are some of the things that people can do?
Yeah, so we have a online petition circulating. Go to martinsostre.com. You can sign it through there. And write to either the Buffalo News, the Challenger, the Criterion. We have to keep this story in the news, regardless of where the case may ultimately end
Yeah.
up being. That we have to be able to be ready to respond and organize ourselves effectively. And then we're also having an event on April 26th, 3 in the afternoon, where we're going to be installing raised garden beds, as well as a free little library and a community bulletin board at 1412 Jefferson Ave, the site of the former Afro-Asian bookshop, which is just
Wow.
a vacant lot. So part of it, too, is, of course, the exoneration is the main focus, but it's also how is that we're honoring and acknowledging this history and continuing the legacy of Miss Geraldine and Martin as well.
Well, please, first of all, send that event to us, and if you want co-sponsors, I'm sure the Western New York Peace Center would be happy
Absolutely.
to co-sponsor it. Also, so to go to martinsostre.org, you said.
.com.
.com.
And we also
Go to
have
martinsostre.
and we also have an Instagram page, Justice for Geraldine and Martin.
Right,
So follow
Right.
that as well for just different updates we're doing on the day-to-day.
sure.
And it's been beautiful just because, I mean, obviously you've been getting a lot of support here
Yes.
in Buffalo, but just even folks from across the country. One being Garrett Felber, who, although he's in Oregon, he's writing a biography of Martin Sostre that will be out
Really?
on May 6th, and Garrett will be in Buffalo on May 9th to talk about that at Burning Books.
Wow.
And
Wow. That's another thing.
yeah, and
That's great.
and I think just us like being able to continue to tell this story, like, so it's
Yes.
not forgotten. And as you know, Terrance was saying earlier, you know, like the past doesn't go anywhere. Like if I, you know, go, you know, if you tell me the past doesn't go anywhere, if I, you know, go grab, you know, a rock or a boulder that's, you know, older than all of us here and drop it on your foot, well, you know, that's still there. That the weight, the consequences of the past are still with us and impacting us.
Oh, absolutely. And that, you know, it's impacting us through the trauma of what happened, and also it's impacting us because these things continue to go on.
Exactly,
It's nothing
exactly.
new
I
about
mean-
the plea dealing, you know,
The
all
plea
of
dealing, it's like I'm gonna protect mine. I'm gonna protect mine, but I'm not gonna protect yours. We should be able to
Well,
protect everybody.
And here's another.
Everybody is in the bowl together. So why would you have to? I'm going to make sure mine's okay. But if yours come on this side of town, or I don't want them around here, I'm going to look at them a different way because they don't belong here. They do not belong here. It should be enough for everybody. I joined the military. I served my country. Why is this still going on where it has to be not you but me, not me but you? Why it can't just be us?
So I want to go into that a little bit more too about really the racism in the system, and I want you to, if you're willing to say, you know, where you've seen it and how you've seen it. I mean, first of all, in the bare bones of the facts of this matter. So it was an Afro-Asian bookstore for a start. Both of you being black. The detectives were white, I assume.
Exactly.
Of course,
exactly.
the DA was
All
white.
of the police
Yep.
that came to arrest us wasn't a black one in the bunch.
Right.
I think I asked you about that. I hate to interrupt you because I hate to interrupt my mother. It was a statement I made with you too, James. I said, well, all I want to know is somebody research it for me. How many black police officers were in Buffalo in 1967?
I remember you
How many
said
black
that.
detectives were in Buffalo in 1967? How many black lieutenants were in Buffalo in 1967? How many patrol officers were in Buffalo in 1967? How many ticket writers were in Buffalo police
That were
force
black.
in 1967
That were
that were
black.
black? Just send me that paperwork. Let me know. I want to know. So when you're trying to judge my mother, judge her.
When
That's
you
all I'm
judge
saying.
me
Judge
and the jury of my peers.
I kept bringing that up
The
because
jury of my peers.
Right.
everybody
Right,
know every. I
right.
mean, in my
So-
community, I live in my community. I know everybody in my community. When they live in their community, I don't mean they by being like that. I'm just saying like this. Well, the police officer, the judge, the lawyer, the DA. Let's see, the clerk. I'm pretty sure they all live in the same neighborhood. They don't live in my neighborhood where I live at. They don't go to church where I go to church at. They don't shop at the same supermarket I shop at. But they're judging my mother because they are my mother peers and they live in our community.
Well, and not only that. I mean, there's also, I mean, it's a matter of fact when you look at who's incarcerated. And when you just looked at the today's paper, when you look at Renay Lynch, who did 22 years, I think it was,
22
and you
years.
look at the detective, you know, or whatever his role is, that, you know, that drunk driving hit, you know,
7
caused
cars.
30 I'm sorry, about $60,000 worth
in
of damage.
damage.
And
I
they
want a
get
jaywalking ticket for that
a
one.
jaywalking ticket.
I want to know who his
jaywalking
lawyer
ticket.
is because I need to talk to him.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't even the.
It wasn't even.
It was. It was the. It was. Oh, what was
Was it
his
a Buffalo police
sister?
officer?
His sister. It was
Yeah.
his sister or sister-in-law.
Yeah.
Was either on the scene or something.
Yeah.
You know. So anyway.
I need to have her in my back pocket. So I'm gonna need her help eventually. I
Well,
see that now.
This is where we just know there's. I mean, as far as justice goes, and then there's also the issues of what happens in the criminal justice system. I don't know, you know, how it was in Bedford Hills, but so were you only in Bedford Hills?
When I first was sentenced, I was sentenced to Albion. And that was upstate New York, I guess.
Right.
And from there, when that closed down, because I guess they didn't have enough population there, they sent us to Bedford Hills, and
Right.
that's where I stayed until I was paroled.
Right. Finally.
Yeah, finally.
Yeah. But so I mean, I think it's important for people to know, you know, that you know, there is the petition for people
Yes.
to sign, you know, and to April
26.
26th.
Yeah,
That
3
sounds
p.m.
like a wonderful event.
Jefferson Avenue.
Yeah, on Jefferson. It's Jefferson and where?
Jefferson and
Woodlawn.
Woodlawn.
Jefferson and Woodlawn. Mm-hmm.
That's like
So-
a block from East Ferry.
Right. That will be very, very good. So so people and let's talk a little bit about how people have helped. I'm going to say, James, how you have, and in fact, I want to thank Matthew who's put something on Facebook that's appreciating
Matthew
the
Lawson,
campaign.
yeah.
Is it?
Matt's
And
Matt and as well as some other volunteers are helping out with our efforts at 1412 Jefferson,
Wonderful.
and I think like Matt, you know, is a perfect example of just like the work we've been doing. Matt used to work at City Hall, so he has a lot of very know-how about like zoning laws or city laws
Right.
governing vacant lots. And another volunteer of ours, his name is Josh. He works at the Niagara Cornell Cooperative Extension. He's helping with pre-growing plants and picking seeds, building garden beds. So and I think it's very fitting too, just with, you know, we're talking about bookstores or even just the philosophy of, you know, Martin and Geraldine of like, we may not have all the answers, but we can figure it out together. Everyone has
Yes, we
something
can.
to bring to the table, and that the bookshops too were, you know, spaces, they weren't just bookshops, they were spaces for the community too,
Right.
where folks could get jazz records or cultural
Yes.
artifacts. If you
Right.
didn't have money for a book, you know, sit there, read it, and learn, you know, the
Right.
transfer of knowledge, the building of community. That's what centers, you know, what was done historically and what we're doing now.
Right. And the conversations and learning from each other. You
Yes.
know, absolutely.
And just even for myself, like, you know, I haven't even known Miss Geraldine and Terrance for a year, and, you know, and I consider them family, you know,
Right.
it's, and
Yes.
just like the courage of these two to just, you know, keep going out there, telling the story, and, you know, and even just like today, you know, and even still we're joking, and, you know, Terrance and I scheming
we
up with
do,
different
we
ideas
do,
and
we
stuff,
do.
you know.
It's,
Oh, we need those ideas.
yeah, we do. I mean,
Yeah. So what
It's-
are
it's-
what are some more of the ideas?
some more of the ideas. Well, this one right here is probably a little radical. I think I don't want to have people thinking I'm one
Well,
way or
it's
the
just
other.
ideas. It's a brainstorm.
Okay,
yeah.
so-
ways that people might help, because this is what
This is
we're
what I
talking
said
about, so
before.
think about it.
I didn't get any feedback from it, but it wasn't trying to be like a black or white thing. It was
Right.
just, it was something about, you know, just the economics of it. It was like, how can we establish a a bucket. Remember I mentioned that
Yeah,
before?
the cup.
We talked about the bucket before. See, the bucket, what was the bucket? So the bucket was, we have people in our community who support each other, and that's great. But who
Right.
supports us? We don't even support each other. So we need to find a way we can access finances, but we have to have finance to access it. So we need to have an account where we can deposit money freely into account. We need a black bank. In Atlanta, they have a black bank. We need a black bank in Buffalo.
I think, isn't
So
it
we-
Bank on Buffalo?
Yeah.
Aren't they working on that? Or is it black owned, I think? Or is it
A woman owned or something.
minority
owned.
minority
Yeah, so we need to
oriented,
have
something
their
like that?
input so we can put money in, so we can buy houses, we can buy land, we can open up businesses, we can help support people to buy their own home. But if we don't have any kind of thing to far as like to make that first step, we're never going to make that first step.
Right.
And that goes back to justice. That goes with equality. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? It has to
Right.
be
No,
enough
it's-
for everybody, not just for a certain few. It has to be enough for everybody. Don't
Absolutely.
be afraid to share, because if we don't have it, we can't give it. And I get the impression sometimes some of these people out here are living off of us, and we should be living off each other. Let's stop it. Let's
Well, we
stop
need
it.
to-
And I was gonna
Yeah.
say it's also just the idea too of take what you need, give what you can, whether that be your labor, your time, or your
yes.
resources. And I think just even with we've had a couple events at 14, 12. We
Burning books.
and these are spaces where we are kind of reclaiming the commons, or it's like they can try to take what is ours, whether that be a bookstore or a lot of these vacant lots where there used to be houses, where there's memories for folks, but they can't take that away forever. We can reclaim that. We can get back what's rightly ours and what folks took from us, or as Terrance said, what folks trying to profit off of people that don't live in the same neighborhood, or shun the people that they're profiting off of.
Well, and the justice issue, that are so profound in our criminal
Yes.
injustice system.
System.
And, the people who are profiting and then the people who are suffering.
Yes.
There is so much damage done. And even when people are incarcerated for a reason or they did something, first of all, a lot of times
human.
they did this much and then they get charged with this much. But whatever it is that it's meant to be rehabilitation, right? So there's ways, and it's not the ways that are happening. People come out worse than they go in most of the time. Not always, but often, because it militates towards that because of the trauma and the suffering and the unhealthy environment.
I got a question for you.
So and we're about to wind up. So very briefly, your question.
So we've been noticing lately about the prison strikes with the guards and stuff. And
Right.
you had the New York State National Guard in there. I'm looking at this thing like this. If the governor can call the National Guard in there to take up the prisons, they should be there every day of the week.
So
Every day of the
I
week.
wanna-
Somebody should be accountable, not just the guards, but you got to have somebody else there, because it's the same thing coming around the same corner as this. Where do all the guards live? They don't live in Buffalo. Where are the prisoners from? They're from Erie County. Where are all these people who are getting all these money from these prisons? They're not putting money back into my community.
So what I need to tell you is we just did a radio show on that. So if you want to look it up, it's on
I know.
YouTube. If you heard it already.
I know.
With
Yes,
Jerome,
yes.
Jerome Thomas Gant and
Yes.
sister what my brain
What's
my
her
brain.
name to be over there?
Yeah, wait. Donna Robinson. Shira Jonna Robinson. So I want to give you a last word here.
Hit it.
Geraldine, anything you want to say or share? Or
I just want to thank everybody for supporting me, and especially James. And like I said, after these time that we've known him, he seemed like he's a family member.
Yes.
And you know what? I love you like you belong to me.
Yes,
too, Miss Geraldine.
Of course. Well, I just want to say we could not be more grateful for the three of you, for all your courage, for all your truth and love. That you're sharing, and so much love to you. We're all in this together, and we are one big human family. So we have to take care of each other, and we can do that. We need to do that, and we're going to do that.
Yes,
So this is
yes.
Talking Peace. Thank you so much. This is Talking Peace, and together we've been talking peace.
Yes, we have.
In truth and love. Thank you so much.